Welcome back to The Explainer. Tonight we are hosting the Acting Commissioner General of the Kenya Revenue Authority, Rispah Simiyu, in her very first television interview since taking office. Is this your first television interview ever?
Yes, first ever.
Okay.
Live.
All right, okay. Yes. Good stuff. Thank you. Thank you for making the time for us on the program tonight. I just want to understand, how you're settling in at the KRA. We know, you came in following a purge, and there was quite a few senior officials who were shown the door. I mean, and then here we have Rispah, who's still been at the commission, at the agency for a while as commissioner. But here you are now as acting commissioner general. So how are you settling in?
Thank you, Yvonne, for having me. Settling in, every day is a new experience. It has been an interesting just about 6 months now. Everything happened pretty fast, but then as a leader, you're challenged to literally hit the ground sprinting. You're never sometimes prepared for what is ahead of you, but then you're expected to deliver, and when you know the task that is ahead of you and how many people then rely on you and depend on you, then it means there's really no time for warming up. So you hit the ground sprinting. I do appreciate, again, just like you said, that having been there for a while, since 2018, I think the settling in was much easier, probably as compared to if I would have come in straight from outside. So it was just slightly ahead of the middle of the year, February. Revenue targets don't go away, they don't melt away. So it means you still have bigger things to deal with. So I wouldn't say there was a lot of room for settling, but it was more of hitting the ground sprinting. Yeah,
and like you said, tax collection must continue. Were there any hitches? You've got, was it 4 commissioners who leave? You've got other senior managers as well. When something like this happens, one would imagine, was there any, instability? Were there any hitches? If so, how did you handle that?
At first, yes. I would say probably it starts off with some uncertainty. And we are human, and across the different levels, everyone kept looking over their shoulder, worried about what next. So, and when having been in the organization and feeling it, and even receiving feedback directly from staff at different levels.
Was staff morale an issue at the time?
To some extent, I would say yes. And like I said, people are human, and you don't know what next. So having received feedback from staff at different levels, I took it upon myself, together with the management team, to engage staff. So we did get onto a virtual conversation with staff just to remind them that there are bigger things to deal with. The country is bigger than who we are, and we have to continue. We have to soldier on. For those of us who are still in office, much more is expected of us. So whereas that we could have had pockets probably of that uncertainty, staff morale concerns, I do believe that we have since reined in by continued conversations, and not just at my level, at different leadership levels, because I've continued to encourage even my director reports to talk to or talk with staff at different levels, just to keep staff at ease and just to remind them that there's more to it, than just the shift or the transition. But then again, we have a country to support.
That's right. During that moment of transition, I guess, we did see quite some activity, particularly from the position of the chair, making decisions and communicating the same to the public. I think there was a statement on suspension of tax reliefs. There was also a full-page ad on, ETIM's implementation. And then we saw a clarification, in fact, coming from the Deputy Commissioner for Corporate Policy. And for those of us looking, in from the outside, it would seem there is an executive chair. So I'm wondering what that situation is like between the chair of the commission, of the agency, and the commissioners. Do you have the space to do the work that you need to do?
Certainly. You need to appreciate that as even with coming into office as acting CG for the first time, that time I have a new boss. So you have to learn your boss is learning you, and that cuts across the various levels. So even with those who are my peers then, at the time, the commissioners, DCs, deputy commissioners who report to me, of course, certain things shift in the sense that the reporting lines have moved. So at that point, and taking note of the transition that had just occurred, probably a little bit of the shake-up across the organization, it needed to be reined in and some stability, because Kenya Revenue Authority is a very sensitive organization. And we do not lose sight of the fact that we are the backbone of this country. You know, we snooze, the country loses. It's that delicate. So at the time, during the transition, at different leadership levels, different people had to step in to do different things. Now, that communication that went out on the suspension was not a suspension of the law and legislation as it was. It was more of suspend as we refine the process, as we make the process more effective. And that is why we had then the Deputy Commissioner in charge of policy. It could have been me, but actually I was aware at that point. But just for him to come in and clarify that we have not suspended the legislation as it is, because what is in law is black and white. It is expected that it is implemented as it is. But what we're clarifying is nobody has suspended the law, but what we're doing, we're putting it on hold just to be sure that what has been happening, even as a new board comes into place. And remember, new management as well to a greater extent. So we are all relatively new in office. We need to understand what's going on. And you see, very quickly we issued clarification and everything was back up and running.
For many, it was that they were clarifying something that had been said by the chair of the board. And it looked a little interesting considering the arrangement we have seen with previous holders of the office. Is this a position of an executive chair? To what extent, is he involved in day-to-day operations, or is that you running the show? I mean, I think Kenyans want to understand the relationship between the two offices.
Okay. So thank you, Yvonne. So at the onset, like I said, we needed stability. We are all new, relatively new in office, both at board level and at management level. So it may have seemed that way then, and I saw it all over the media. But you see, when we come back to our boardroom, the board deals with strategy and more of policy direction. The board deals with management and implementation of what then is happening. And I want to believe that over time, even if that fear was there, whether real or not, that has since been resolved. And increasingly, you'd see that it's leadership and management sending out communication on all aspects, largely all aspects around our operations.
Okay, thank you for that. We will get back and talk a lot more about the tax regime policy in the country. Several questions already coming in from members of the public in terms of, from the SME sector, and they have quite a few questions for you. Rispah Simiyu, who's the Acting Commissioner General of the Kenya Revenue Authority. We will have more with her when we come back, but first, we want to update you with some more stories, and then we can come back